You ever have one of those neighbors who just decides your property line doesn't matter? That was my reality the day I came home to find part of my fence missing. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe a contractor got the wrong address or something. But nope. It was Karen, my next-door neighbor, standing there like she owned the place, literally. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I needed access to the back of my yard. Your fence was in the way." Just like that. No warning. No permission. Just took a saw to it and cut it down like it was hers. Now, here's the thing. I'd always tried to keep things civil. I waved when I saw her, kept my yard clean, never made noise. But apparently, that wasn't enough. For Karen, according to her, she had a right to get through my property because it was more convenient. She even told me she was doing me a favor by clearing it out. I was speechless. I checked the property lines, pulled up the county. Maps, everything confirmed what I already knew. That fence. 100% on my land. I filed a police report and thought maybe, just maybe, she'd back off. But instead, she doubled down. She kept walking through my yard like it was a public park. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't just going to fix the fence, I was going to fix the entire situation. Then, by what I can only describe as pure luck or karma, something wild happened. Her back property line, yeah, the strip she was so obsessed with getting access to, came up for auction. And let me tell you, what I did next changed everything. Stick around. Because what started as a fence dispute turned into something way bigger than either of us expected. And Karen never saw it coming. So here's a little background before everything spiraled out of control. I bought my home about 5 years ago. It's a quiet neighborhood, mostly older folks who keep to themselves. When I moved in, Karen already lived next door. At first, she seemed harmless, just a little nosy. She'd peek over the fence when I was grilling or ask questions about my guests, but I figured that was just how she was. Annoying, yeah, but not worth starting drama over. Then slowly, things started to shift. She'd complain if I left my trash cans out too long. She'd leave notes about my lawn if the grass got even a little tall. One time, I parked my truck a few inches over the curb, and she actually called the city on me. But even then, I tried to let it go. I thought maybe she was just lonely, or maybe she had too much free time. But cutting down my fence, that was different. That wasn't harmless. That was bold. What made it worse was how confident she was about it. Like she actually believed she had some legal right to trespass and destroy my property because it made her gardening routine easier. She kept saying things like, "You'll thank me later, and it's just a fence." But to me, it wasn't just a fence, it was a boundary. Not just physical, but a line of respect. And she crossed it. Now here's where things started to get strange. A few weeks after the fence incident, I overheard Karen talking to a contractor. In her backyard, she was planning some kind of extension, either a shed or maybe even a small patio. And it clicked. She didn't just want access, she had plans. Big ones. Ones that involved space that wasn't hers. I didn't say anything yet. I just kept my head down and watched. That's when I stumbled across something online that caught me completely off guard. The county was holding a small auction, leftover parcels of land from past disputes and unpaid taxes. One of them, a strip of land directly behind Karen's house. It's the exact one she'd been trying so hard to use. And that's when everything started falling into place. I couldn't believe it at first. That narrow strip of land, just a few feet wide but running the full length behind Karen's property, was listed right there in the county's online auction portal. It had probably been forgotten or tied up in some old dispute years ago, but now it was up for grabs. Most people wouldn't care about a chunk of land that small, but I knew exactly how much it meant to Karen. That's why she tore down my fence in the first place. She wanted access to that very space. And now I had a chance to own it. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to stir the pot too early, but I quietly went through the paperwork, did the research, and even drove out to the county office just to make sure everything was legit. The woman at the desk confirmed it was real. The auction was a few days away, and no one else had shown interest in that specific lot. That's when I realized just how far ahead Karen might have been thinking. She probably assumed no one would notice or care enough to bid. Maybe she even thought she could grab it herself without any competition. But while all this was going on, things with Karen got worse. She started acting like that whole back area already belonged to her. I caught her digging near the edge of the property line, laying bricks, even stacking lumber. One afternoon, she had landscapers out there clearing brush like she was prepping for a full backyard renovation. I confronted one of the guys, asked who hired him. He said Karen told him. It was part of her lot. She never said a word to me. Meanwhile, a friend of mine who lives 2 blocks over told me Karen had been going around the neighborhood complaining about me. She was spreading this weird story that I was being unreasonable and causing trouble. Over a few feet of dirt, I started to wonder if she was trying to pressure me publicly in case anything legal came up. But here's the thing. What she didn't know was that I was already one step ahead. And as the auction day crept closer, I couldn't help but wonder what she'd do when she found out I was about to change everything. The night before the auction, I barely slept. My mind was racing, playing out every possible scenario. What if Karen somehow found out and showed up to outbid me? What if someone else, maybe a developer or some investor, saw potential in that little strip of land and decided to snatch it up last minute? I knew it was unlikely, but I couldn't shake the anxiety. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about drawing a line literally and figuratively that Karen couldn't cross again. The morning of the auction, I got there early. It wasn't a huge crowd, just a few people scattered around the room. Most were looking at bigger plots, actual buildable lots. When they finally got to the parcel behind Karen's house, I could feel my heart pounding. The bidding started low, and to my surprise, no one raised their hand. Not a single person. I almost hesitated, thinking it was too good to be true. But then I raised my number, and within seconds, it was over. Just like that, it was mine. I signed the paperwork, paid the small fee, and walked out of that office with a deed in hand. But here's where things really started heating up. That same afternoon, I got home to find Karen in the back, once again on that strip raking. Planting, humming to herself like she owned it. She had no clue what had just happened. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I wanted to make sure everything was filed and confirmed before I made any moves. But I took photos. I documented every square inch of what she was doing. Then, 2 days later, she went too far. I came home to find her installing what looked like the foundation for a small gazebo. She had brought in cinder blocks, laid out string lines, and even had a wheelbarrow sitting right in the middle of what was now, legally, my property. I stood there for a full minute, stunned. She looked up and smiled like everything was perfectly normal. "Hope you don't mind," she said. "I'm finally making the space usable." That's when I knew this wasn't just carelessness anymore. Karen had no idea what storm was about to hit her, and I was done playing nice. I didn't say a word to her that day, just turned around and walked back inside, clutching the deed in my hand like it was a live wire. But the truth was, I wasn't ready for what came next, because just when I thought I held all the cards, Karen pulled a move I never saw coming. The very next morning, I woke up to find a bright orange notice taped to my mailbox. At first, I thought it was just junk or maybe something from the HOA, but no, it was a formal complaint. Karen had filed a claim with the city, accusing me of harassing her and deliberately interfering with her landscaping plans. She claimed I had been trespassing, photographing her backyard without consent and threatening her privacy. I was stunned. I hadn't even spoken to her since the auction. But there it was, in black and white. She was trying to flip the script before I had a chance to act. And that wasn't all. A few hours later, a city inspector actually showed up at my door. Apparently, Karen had made enough noise that someone had to come out and verify the boundary conditions. I walked him through everything, showed him the original property lines, the auction documents, even the photos of her building on the newly purchased strip. He nodded along, polite but distant, clearly just doing his job. But what really got under my skin was the way Karen stood in her yard during the whole thing. Arms crossed, watching us like she had nothing to hide. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just guessing. She knew, somehow, someway, she had found out about the auction, but instead of admitting she lost the land, she was going all in, trying to create a narrative where I was the one causing problems. Maybe she thought if she stirred up enough trouble, I'd back off. Or worse, maybe she was planning to fight it legally and stall things out. I realized then that this wasn't just a petty fence war anymore. Karen had turned it into a full-blown battleland now. It wasn't just about land. It was about reputation, rights, and who the neighborhood would believe. And she wasn't. I knew if I didn't handle this the right way, Karen might actually twist the story enough to make me look like the villain. So I stopped talking to her entirely and focused on getting every piece of evidence in order. I gathered my official deed, photos of her building on my land, the timeline of the auction, and even saved screenshots of her social media posts bragging about her new backyard project. The final push came when I spoke to the inspector again, this time with everything laid out clearly. Once he saw the legal proof that I owned the strip, his tone changed fast. He thanked me for the documentation and said the matter would be noted in the report. 2 days later, a notice was delivered to both our properties. Karen was ordered to stop construction immediately and remove any structures that crossed onto my land. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Karen, that evening, she stormed over, furious. You think you're clever? You think this little win makes you the hero? She snapped. I stayed calm and simply said, Karen, I didn't cut down your fence. You did that to me. I just followed the law. But then came the twist I didn't see coming. A few weeks later, I received a call from a local real estate agent. Turns out Karen had quietly listed her house she was planning to move. But here's the kicker. During the property survey for the sale, the buyers discovered something that even I hadn't noticed. That gazebo foundation she started building. Part of it extended onto another tiny strip of land behind my new parcel. And that sliver. It wasn't hers either, it belonged to the city. Because of that, her property was now flagged with a dispute that could delay or even cancel the sale. In trying to grab more than what was hers, she tangled herself in a bigger mess. I didn't even have to do anything at that point. The consequences were unfolding naturally. In the end, the fence was rebuilt, the land officially marked, and peace slowly returned. But that chapter left a lasting mark, not just on the property line, but on everything I thought I knew about boundaries, both physical and personal. A few months passed, and the neighborhood finally felt quiet again. Karen ended up selling her house, but not without delays and price drops, thanks to the land mess she created. The new owners who moved in were a younger couple, kind, respectful, and the complete opposite of what I'd dealt with before. We had a chat over the fence one afternoon, and they even joked about making sure the property lines were clear before planting anything. It was the first real laugh I'd had in my backyard in a long time. Looking back, it still amazes me how something as simple as a fence turned into a full-blown battle over boundaries, land ownership, and respect. Buying that narrow strip at auction wasn't just about making a point to protect my home, and reminded me that sometimes you have to stand your ground, even when it feels uncomfortable. And honestly, it was never about revenge. It was about fairness, and not letting someone take advantage just because they thought they could get away with it. I also learned the power of staying calm, keeping records, and letting the truth speak for itself. Karen tried to spin her own version of the story, but in the end, the facts won out. It's wild how property line disputes can spiral, especially when a neighbor thinks the rules don't apply to them. But what matters most is how you handle it. Now my fence stands solid again. The land is officially mine, and I've got peace on both sides of the property. No more surprise gardening projects or backdoor drama. Just a quiet yard, a clear line, and a story I'll never forget. Thanks for watching, and remember, always double-check your boundaries. You never know when a Karen might try to redraw them for you.